I'm Sigma,
And I'm Jason,
and welcome to The Scoreboard.
the show that proves its points.
Tonight on The Scoreboard, we will be reviewing a game that was considered a classic of the early 90s.
The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past was released in 1991 in Japan and 1992 in Europe and North America for the Super Nintendo.
Now, Jason, I know this game was a personal favorite of mine growing up, and I'm sure it was considered the same in many households.
Well, I couldn't agree more, Sigma. A Link to the Past was released as a sequel to the positively received title for the NES, The Legend of Zelda, and the, well, just received title, The Adventure of Link.
More like The Adventure of Steak. But actually, I kind of like that game.
Me too. In modern times, we have natural distrust for sequels, but A Link to the Past was actually regarded as a momentous improvement upon the original.
Tonight on The Scoreboard, we'll be examining this game in detail to see if it holds up to the critical acclaim it has received.
But Sigma, our viewers might be wondering, what is the scoreboard?
Well, Jason, how about we tell them? The Scoreboard is a review show where we evaluate every single part of a game to determine its value as a whole.
We divide a game's attributes up into 5 major categories: gameplay, design, presentation, content, and experience. Finally, we have a bonus round that encompasses any attribute that doesn't quite fit into any of these categories or that has a personal resonance for one of us.
In each of these categories, we identify these specific attributes and award them a score of between -30 and +30.
Way to point that one out.
After going through all of the categories and the bonus round, we give the game an overall rating of either strikeout, fumble, foul, par, bullseye, slam dunk, or home run. This will complete its total score.
Then the game will be added to our scoreboard, where it will be compared to other games that we have already reviewed. Well, except this time, considering this will be our first review.
To simplify this for viewers, a positive score means the game's good qualities outweigh its bad qualities, and a negative score would mean the opposite.
Hopefully these scores haven't bored you. Now, let's get on with this review.
In this category, we will be examining how the game interfaces with the player through controls, mechanics, and difficulty.
Overall, A Link to the Past controls pretty much as expected.
With effective and satisfying action responses, like the sword responding quite quickly, and items like the arrows and hookshot having a slight planned delay that creates a depth of strategy.
However, there are slight issues with enemy hitboxes you can see here, and also sword combat pretty much just comes down to being on the right side of your opponent.
And there are a few instances where item functionality feels illogical, and you're not sure whether or not your items will be effective.
Speaking of items, the game does offer a wide selection of them for you to choose from.
But some of them do pretty much the exact same thing.
But the game does do a good job at teaching you when certain items are more effective. Take this room for example. There's a bunch of torches in it, so obviously we want to light them. Guess we'll shoot them with the fire rod. But there's all these Gibdos in the way. We'll try and light them anyways though. Oh wow, the Gibdo's burning. I guess the fire rod was its weakness.
Overall, the game does a good job employing interesting mechanics to create clever puzzles, like pushing blocks or finding hidden keys and switches.
But every once in a while, you're going to have to do something completely random that only happens once or twice, like pulling on this statue's tongue. At least I hope that's a tongue.
Ugh. A Link to the Past does a great job balancing difficulty, with some sections where the player is likely to make mistakes in order to learn, but the punishment for these mistakes is not severe enough to be overly frustrating.
The difficulty also has an interesting curve. For example, receiving the Master Sword gives the player a sense of empowerment, but is immediately followed by the introduction of the Dark World, where there's an increase in enemy health and offensive capability that offers the dynamic challenge.
Well, it appears this classic has barely wrestled with a positive score. Let's see how it fares when we move to...
This category looks at the parts of the game that the player interacts with.
One of the strongest features in A Link to the Past is its world design. The overworld is expansive and provides the player with many areas to explore.
On top of that, the Dark World acts as a second overworld interconnected with the first one that increased the depth of how the player could interact with both of them.
The player being the link between worlds.
Sigma, wrong game.
Oh, sorry! The overworld also provided the player many chances to experiment with their newly acquired skills, like warping using the hookshot and power gloves to reach areas that were previously inaccessible.
Experimenting with your new toys. What is this? College?
The dungeons also had some cool features like exiting and entering different segments of the forest and rescuing a decoy maiden in the thieves' hideout, to name a few.
Yeah, we must have been blind not to notice she was a fake.
The dungeons were also designed quite differently from one another, making them really stand out. For example, Turtle Rock was designed to look like a cave, while the Ice Palace featured some really cool sections that were, well, covered in ice.
Also, the dungeons were short enough that you never really had to stay in one location long enough to get bored of it, and the detailed maps made it possible to explore dungeons and the overworld with ease.
The game also maintained our interest by constantly providing new enemies with unique designs, instead of just palette swapping the old enemies to create the illusion we were facing new foes.
Unfortunately, they didn't follow this same strategy with the boss designs. I mean, just look. We have an eyeball, and another eyeball, oh, and a worm, and some more worms, and a Helmosaur King. There's just 3 worms in a rock.
At least the fights were typically interesting, involving carefully learning patterns and developing strategies with your items.
Looks like our classic is earning its high praise, but will its score continue to rise as we move to...
This category is all about how a game looks and sounds.
The music in A Link to the Past is wonderful and iconic. A testament to this is that the music is still considered classic today and is reused and reorchestrated all the time.
Not only was the music excellently composed, but was also used effectively to convey moods. For example, the music in the light world was a light, adventurous fanfare, whereas in the dark world, the music was a heavier, more ominous march.
The game also included a set of sound effects that covered every interaction. The sound effects were sharp and clear and really added to the feeling of each action in the game. I mean, just listen to Link pick up all these rupees. It just sounds so good.
They also included a sound effect to indicate when Link's health was getting low, which effectively created a sense of urgency.
Sometimes a little too effectively.
The 16-bit art style was used effectively in the game, creating detailed areas and elaborate sprites that were completely distinguishable. The game also incorporated a variety of colors in the visuals that helped convey different moods, like the darker and more muted colors, creating an air of mystery in the forest.
Even though the game uses a variety of colors, it maintains a consistent aesthetic, and all of the visuals look like they belong in the same world, creating a grander sense of immersion. However, the game has a rare tendency to experience some visual slowdown when too many sprites are present, and occasional clipping on a handful of collisions.
A Link to the Past also provided a fun introductory cinematic, fleshing out some characters and preparing the player for the plot of the game by explaining the inciting incidents.
It also had an end credits cinematic showing the fate of every character in the game, even the ones we don't care about and have likely forgot even existed.
Well, it seems like this game's score is unstoppable. Perhaps we can find some flaws in...
This category is about what makes me happy.
No, Jason, it's content, not content. It's about the quantity and quality of features within a game.
Well, either way, they both make me happy.
Similar to hosts of the ScoreBoard, A Link to the Past is a perfect length. This game contains over 10 dungeons and many explorable sections of the overworld, providing the player with a lasting experience that never settles and gets dull.
The game also offers an abundance of side quests with many optional areas and even optional items such as the Magic Cape and the Cane of Burning.
The optional side quests and items are meaningful and provide the player with additional strategy options and increased health that is a reward for the player that took the time to explore.
However, the game doesn't offer any additional content after completion, like a New Game Plus or any different modes, leaving it with little replay value other than it being a really great game.
Well, looks like this game is on a hot streak, and I expect it to continue when we move to...
This category is all about how it feels to play the game, whether that feeling is experienced through gripping narrative or emotions evoked through gameplay.
A Link to the Past makes you feel like you're on a grand adventure.
A grand? I would have thought it cost like only $50.
No, I mean grand is an epic. With so much to do and explore, the player really feels a sense of agency when no one's telling you where to go all the time.
Also, the story is believable, and every character and location just seem to fit together.
And the story isn't force-fed to you through large blocks of exposition. The larger narrative is gleaned through smaller interactions with NPCs in the environment.
The text in the game is also very clear and not intrusive. Dialogue is used effectively and sparingly at key points in the game where the player wouldn't understand what was going on otherwise.
Though I can think of one certain moment where dialogue seems to come out of nowhere. And the localization team seems to forget the nationality of a certain pigman? I mean, lad? On guard? Where is this guy from?
Well, it really seems this golden oldie deserves our respect with a score like that.
But wait, we still have to do the...
Hey Sigma, you know what really takes me out of a final boss battle?
What?
Being taken out of a final boss battle. If you fall in the pit surrounding the Ganon fight, you simply have to exit the pyramid and start the boss battle all over again. Weird text and all.
But speaking of the pyramid, I do want to point out that amazing feeling you get when Aghanim first transports you to the Dark World and you realize there's twice as much game to be played.
Though needing the ice rod found in some random cave near Lake Hylia to beat the boss Turnex can be very frustrating for first timers. Medicine of Magic? Is that all? Is that really all I'm gonna need there, old man?
But the game does have lots of secret Easter eggs, like the Chris Houlihan room, a secret room that was dedicated to a Nintendo Power contest winner.
And locations that reference the original game, like Spectacle Rock and the Lost Woods.
I think this sums up all of our feelings about A Link to the Past, except our overall rating.
Overall, I think we have no choice but to give The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past a
home run! May the way of the hero lead to the scoreboard.
In total, A Link to the Past has received a positive score of 480, making it the worst game on the scoreboard.
And also the best. If you like A Link to the Past, check it out on our Let's Play channel, Sigma Plays.
And if you enjoyed this review, be sure to tune in for our next one. But until then, this has been
The Scoreboard.